Scrolling along with Susan here. This is my second project that I'll be doing with instruments and rhythm instruments, and I'll be making a thumb piano or a thumb harp that looks kind of like this. It's when you take your thumbs and plunk on the metal tines and it creates a different sound. It's kind of fun. I'm hoping it's going to be kind of fun. My first one was the rasp, and I have another YouTube video on this if you're interested in making a rasp. This one is going to be made out of using 3/4 inch cherry for the body of it, and I'll be using 1/4 inch maple for the top and the bottom part of my thumb piano. And I'm going to be using my scroll saw instead of a table saw or other type of equipment, so that if you only have a scroll saw, you can still make this project. And I've never done it before, so this is going to be a great experience for me. Now, I had to go out and buy fish tape, which I've never even heard of. This is a 1/4 inch flat piece of metal, and I've had 25 feet of it. I did not need that much. I got it at Home Depot for around $20, but I figured I'm really going to like this, and if it turns out well, I'll be making many more, so it was worth the investment. For the sound hole, I have a very large hole that I'll be cutting all the way through on my main body that I used a lid with. And then the part that's going to be going on top will be smaller, and I'm just using a cup and making it just the right size and shape so that this hole will be smaller, lay right on top of this one, and the sound will go through this one into this main hole. For a much simpler first thumb piano, you do not have to have a fancy shape or anything. Just use the rectangles, and you can lay them right on top of each other, and then maybe later on create something special. But I figured for my first one, I wanted to have a little bit of style on it. It's not any wider than 6.5 inches because I want to be able to use both thumbs and reach the middle part. If you get too wide, then you're going to have to play it by setting it down, and you won't be able to hold it. I'm going to be using a drill bit to drill in to the sound holes so that I can cut them out on my scroll saw. I have a sacrificial piece underneath so I won't have any tear out. Make sure that it's 90-degree angle, and I'm just going to choose one of the corners here. It's that simple. The first thing I'm going to cut is the sound hole on the body of my thumb piano. And it does not have to be super accurate because you will not see this from the front or the back. But I still have my guidelines here, so it's mostly a circle, and then I flattened it up here at the top. I have a number 7 reverse tooth blade in. This is 3/4 inch thick, so you need to use a higher number blade for the strength. 7 or 9 would work fine. And it's not very detailed. So if it was more detailed, you'd probably have to go for a lower number and change blades often. Nice, even, steady pressure when you're turning your piece. When you're working on the outside of the piece, make sure that you do not push the blade. Of course, you should never push the blade, but it's a lot easier to start pushing when you're on the outside. Don't force the blade, let the blade do the cutting. At this point, I'm keeping this number 7 blade still in. This is only a 1/4 inch thick, so I could change to a smaller blade, but this will be a cinch to cut. Now this, you want to be a lot more accurate because this is going to be on your outside that you will be seeing the sound hole. This hole turned out pretty good. it's a little flat over here, and I need to clear it up here a little bit. And I'm going to use my scroll saw to do this part. This part, the flat part, I think I'm going to just sand because I don't want to take off too much and make it worse. Here's a back view of the sound hole and a front view. Now it's time to cut out and shape the back part, and I'm going to make this very simple. It's just going to be curved in here on the handles on the side and curved at the bottom and curved up here at the top. Do check your work at this point and make sure that everything is even. All your cuts are even on both sides so it doesn't look whopper jobbed. I have cut a piece of cherry that's 3/4 inch thick, 5 inches long, and 1.5 inches deep. It's going to be my soundboard where I attach all of my keys to. So now that I have that cut, I'm going to be doing all my sanding. And if you have a handheld sander, it makes life a lot easier. If you don't, you can use sanding blocks, other sanding tools to smooth over all the edges and prepare your piece for gluing up. They've both been sanded. All of the residue has been wiped away, and use a very good type of wood glue. I use Type Bond 2. There's a lot of good ones out there, so just choose the one that you like. And it's time to glue up. When you're working with 1/4 inch wood, it will have a tendency to bend. So make sure when you're clamping it after gluing it that it's a nice even pressure all around. And also make sure you take care of any glue that squirts out on the sides. My scroll saw and wood cutting part is done. Here's my finished part of the wood. It's sanded and glued. It kind of looks more like a frame of a cat instead of a guitar, but that's what I'm working with. I also want to point out that you want to keep the scraps that you cut out, because I'll probably make a small little thumb piano out of this eventually. Now is the hard part. It's the part working with steel and metal that I've never done before. So I've researched a lot on YouTube and talked to some people that know something about cutting metal, and this is what I ended up with. I don't want to use any electric tools. They're great if you have them. If you want to use an angle grinder or something like that, it's fine, but I noticed in the videos that the little pieces and shards of metal go everywhere, and I want to try to keep it a little bit more contained. Of course, wear eye protection and nose and mouth protection when working with wood as well as metal to make sure those little particles don't fly around and get into your body. So I am going to be using mainly a hacksaw with a fine tooth metal blade in it to cut my 1/8 inch thick piece of bar that's going to fit on top and keep the metal tines down. And I'll be using regular tin snips to cut the real thin tines that I'll be using. So what I've done with this is I've marked it 5 inches in just with a pencil. I'm going to be taking these bolt cutters in order to score right on the line so that I don't think I can go all the way through, but at least this will get me started. This took a little bit of time, but it really wasn't too bad. This is a piece of steel wire tubing hook that I bought for about 70 cents. And these two pieces are going to be placed about, I don't know, about 1/2 inch apart like this. But I have to cut these, and I'm going to give them a try. I'm going to just try to use, not tin snips, but the bolt cutter. Wow, that's easy. Smoothing off rough edges. I've cut my 2 metal pieces to length, and I've drawn 2 lines on my block of wood that I'll be putting on top. And this is how it's going to be positioned. So I'm going to be using a simple saw to put an indentation so I can glue it in and it's not just laying on top, so that it will stay in there securely when I glue them. I'm starting out with a wood chisel to create a groove, and then I'll be using my saw from there. Don't go too deep because you want to make sure that the round pieces of metal are above the wood. It's time for more drilling. I purchased 2 2.5-inch bolts with washers and nuts, and I'm going to be drilling through the bottom unit all the way through this, and through the metal. And then I will be countersinking on the bottom so it's still nice and smooth. Then I will be gluing this up and also gluing these 2 metal pieces on. I happen to have a drill press, so I'm using that, but you can use your hand drill at 90 degrees. And I'm also holding the pieces together with 2-sided tape and a piece of painter's tape. Just a reminder to wear your mask because you're dealing with metal and wood. And here I am drilling the rest of the way through and then countersinking in the back with a wider drill bit. Right now I'm doing a dry run to make sure everything fits well before continuing. It's time to glue the bridge to the body. I'm using E6000 glue, and I put it in my grooves here so I can bond metal to wood. I'm clamping it down and letting it dry. Now that I have all the wood parts done, I am putting a nice coat of mineral oil on it. Now that I have finished it, I wish I would have used, and I probably still will use, polyurethane to give it a little bit nicer coat. So far, this has been the most difficult part to cut. The steel, even though it's thin, you would think would be a lot easier. So I've marked it. I try to score it, and it really hasn't even put a dent into it. Well, I guess a tiny bit. And I try to use just the saw, but the saw is slipping all over the place. So I have it's a fairly reasonably priced saber saw with a steel blade in it, and I'm going to try to do most of it with that, and then I'll use the rest by hand. I had to use a lot of elbow grease in this, but once I got a pattern down, it became a bit easier. One thing I wish I would have done differently is cut the tines a little bit smaller. You'll see in the rest of the video that the tines are really long, and it's harder to cut them once they're already cut to a 7-inch or shorter length. And here I am bending both ends. Well, I got more work to do. So I've cut all my steel pieces, I put them in, and they're sliding all over the place. And even with these popsicle sticks, the outsides are fine. You get in here, and they're moving all around. So I need to drill another hole and put another bolt right in the center because it's not able to hold the ones in the middle. I've drilled the other hole, have my other bolt in, and I just have popsicle sticks to see if it will hold properly. And if you don't want to do the complicated metal for the tines, you can use popsicle sticks. You can also use chopsticks, and each one's going to create a different sound. I discovered that I needed to put some rubber, real thin rubber, between this piece of metal and the keys. This helped them have some grip and wouldn't slide as much. I'm tuning this to a C scale, this being C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. I still need to be adjusting. And this takes a really long time. So you have to unscrew and then tap it into the right spot. Take your time with this. I did it. I finished my thumb piano, or my kalimba. It was an education, and I really learned a lot about working with metal. I'm not sure I enjoyed it as much as working with wood, but I'm glad I learned how to do it. And I had a couple challenges along the way and was able to overcome them. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you like what you see, click that like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.